For the better part of 2 decades, Beijing has been playing a long game. They've systematically bought up cheap global commodities, expanded their maritime footprint, and operated under the quiet assumption that they would naturally inherit the mantle of global leadership. But that entire growth model rests on a surprisingly fragile foundation. To keep its factories running and its export economy alive, China relies almost entirely on imported crude oil, physically shipped across thousands of miles of ocean from the Middle East. Right now, that reliance is causing a severe domestic shock. In March, Chinese export growth collapsed to just 2.5%, down from a 22% surge earlier in the year. At the same time, domestic gasoline prices spiked by 11%. That rapid surge in energy costs is directly hitting tens of millions of jobs across the country, with heavy impacts rippling through China's vast chemical and refining industries. The United States is deliberately weaponizing global geography to force this economic shock, targeting the specific ocean pathways Beijing needs to survive. Global maritime trade is dictated by physical geography. Massive cargo fleets can cross open oceans easily, but eventually they are forced to funnel through a handful of narrow, unavoidable sea lanes. For China's energy supply chain, 2 specific coordinates matter more than any others. In the west, there is the Strait of Hormuz. In the east, the Strait of Malacca. Over a matter of weeks, the United States executed a coordinated sequence of maneuvers to secure operational control over both of these critical access points. Because these are physical maritime bottlenecks, they cannot be bypassed through diplomatic protests or a political posturing. If you control the straits, you control the supply. The first maneuver happened in the Persian Gulf. Operation Epic Fury systematically dismantled Iranian energy facilities, bridges, and railways, heavily degrading the regime's infrastructure. Even before the military intervention, the Iranian regime's economy was collapsing. Food inflation had surged to 105% year over year, and their money became so worthless, the government had to issue a single 10 million rial note. To compound the internal collapse, U.S. naval forces established a comprehensive blockade of the Persian Gulf, a waterway that normally accounts for 90% of all Iranian trade. The trap was set with precision. The blockade doesn't just halt ships bound for Iranian ports. It intercepts any vessel that has paid a transit toll to the Iranian regime while passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This chart illustrates China's total crude oil imports. Roughly 45 to 50% of their entire foreign oil supply gets pulled through the Strait of Hormuz, including 11% that was coming directly from Iran. Now, that immense slice of their energy grid is trapped. By dismantling the Iranian regime's economic capacity and securing the Gulf, the United States effectively severed half of Beijing's energy supply line without ever aiming a weapon at China. While international attention was focused entirely on the Middle East, a secondary maneuver was executed thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia on April 13th. The U.S. Department of Defense quietly signed a major defense cooperation partnership with Indonesia. To understand the weight of this agreement, you have to look at the Strait of Malacca. 23 million barrels of oil flow through this narrow channel every single day. That is 29% of all global seaborne oil trade, and half of those shipments are bound for China. Under the new pact, the United States is deploying advanced sensor networks, integrating surveillance technology, and placing joint special forces directly along this exact waterway. The United States now maintains active overflight access, technological surveillance, and physical military assets, monitoring the single most important energy lifeline Beijing has left. Beijing's immediate response relies entirely on their domestic strategic reserves, which currently hold roughly 1 billion barrels of crude oil in storage. But mathematically, that stockpile drains rapidly. Drawing down those reserves to compensate for the Hormuz closure buys the Chinese economy maybe 3 or 4 months of operation. For 20 years, China invested heavily in presenting itself as a powerful alternative peacemaker in the Middle East. Yet, as their primary strategic partner in Iran crumbles under military and economic pressure, Beijing has been completely paralyzed. They are trapped by their own geography. They simply do not possess the deep-water naval logistics required to project force across 2 oceans and break a coordinated maritime blockade. The current crisis exposes a severe paradox in the Chinese system. They rely heavily on the United States as the primary consumer market for their exports, while simultaneously relying on physical shipping lanes that the United States military now effectively controls. Geopolitical leverage is being methodically applied to the physical board, piece by piece, until Beijing's legal options for movement have effectively vanished. Securing these two specific maritime bottlenecks hands the United States a strategic position in the Indo-Pacific that functions through physical control rather than political negotiation.